No greater analyst than Rich Greenfield, a founding partner of LightShed Partners, and one of the smartest minds on looking at what's going on in the media business today and thinking about what's around the corner and what's ahead. So, welcome to the stage, Rich Greenfield.
John, thanks for having me. I'm sorry we couldn't be together in Cincinnati today. It would have been great to be with you in person. But, my day job for the last 25 years has been trying to figure out whether media stocks, everything from Disney to Netflix to Comcast and Twitter and everything in between, whether they're going to go up or go down. And that's sort of the way we think about the world. My partners, Walt Piecyk and Brandon Ross, the three of us left to create our own firm, LightShed, back in September of 2019. And when you think about disruption, as we sit here today, even pre-COVID, 2020 and beyond, you really have to think about what's transforming and how media businesses are being fundamentally challenged, and kind of this collision, the way I think about it, between media and tech. I mean, back when I started in 1995 at Goldman Sachs, sort of the only thing that was being talked about in terms of disruption was the creation of the DVD. I still remember seeing it at the Warner Brothers studio, showing us what a DVD was eventually going to be. And it wasn't even really disruption. It was basically just the evolution from a VHS cassette to a DVD. And when you think about what's happening today, and yes, COVID is certainly accelerating a lot of the underlying trends, but there is no doubt that the disruption of media is happening at a pace that we've never seen before. You don't have to look any further than just the market caps of these companies, and look at the way the tech companies dwarf the media companies. I mean, the fact that Netflix now is bigger than Verizon in market cap, Disney, AT&T, Comcast, and then you look at some of the names on this slide. I mean, look at things like Lionsgate and AMC Networks. I mean, they're almost like pimples where they don't even show up on the slide at this point because they're so small versus, nearing the $2 trillion market caps of Apple and Amazon. And what you really think about when you see these companies is that they have direct relationships. These platforms have direct relationships with the consumer. They know who you are. They know everything about you. They know what you've been doing. In fact, most of these companies probably know, John, that you and I are actually on this call right now having this conversation. Yet most of the media sector that's grown up over the last several decades knows nothing about you. They've been simply wholesalers of content. You even had Ron Howard on earlier. He's just a content creator. He talks about he's a content purveyor to any and all platforms, and those are changing, and he's had to adapt to them. And the reality is each of these media companies is now facing this reality that you need to have this direct relationship with your consumer. And so what I thought I would do is just start with a quick video that really highlights, in the span of just a very short period of time, 4 years, how this transformation has occurred in media. So let's roll the video.
Moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
We view Netflix as friend, not foe. There's no reason for us to beat Netflix. We actually are taking advantage of Netflix great growth, and I guess maybe you could argue we've helped Netflix great growth. As fortunate as we are to have Disney and ABC and ESPN and Pixar and Marvel and Star Wars or Lucasfilm, fantastic. But in today's world, it's almost not enough to have all that stuff unless you have access to your consumer, who, because of technology, is providing you with incredible data to provide the consumer with a more customized, personalized experience. We felt that we were no longer seeing a speed bump of disruption, which is basically something that occurs, changes things a bit, we react to it, basically figure out how to contend with it and move on. What we were seeing instead was real, profound, and permanent change. I think in today's world, I don't think the consumer really wants to buy 150, 200 channels of programming for a fairly significant price when they're not interested in many of those channels. In some cases, they can't even find them.
So you think about just how fast that, 4 years, that is a dramatic turn from Netflix is a friend to the bundle basically doesn't work for the consumer anymore, and we have to take, sort of evasive action. And go back to Disney in 2014, they gave a presentation up in Bristol, Connecticut. So this was a Disney-led presentation on the state of the multi-channel bundle. And look at the part that we've highlighted here. It's right there on the chart. Cord cutting is fractional. There was over 100 million subscribers to the multi-channel bundle. bundle, this was a great business. Everyone was paying. Essentially, the entire country, 115 plus million homes were paying for multi-channel television, whether they watched all those channels or even could find them, to use Iger's own words, but everybody was paying in. And this was a great business with very high margins and high profitability and offered a great platform for advertisers. Now let's fast forward to where we are today. And, many of these trends, this was already bad pre-COVID. We were losing 2 million subscribers in Q1, cut the cord. We think it'll be over 2.5 million in Q2. And it's very possible that by the end of this year, you actually end this, reasonably close to where subscribers to the multi-channel bundle were back in 1997. Just try to wrap your arms around the fact that, you're only going to be able to reach 70 plus million people out of 125 million households in this country through advertising on linear TV. And I think it just shows you just how fast this is now accelerating. And the why is it accelerating is sort of obvious in a sense, is that there's just too many options with great price value relationships. Think about all the names that are on this slide. Look at all of these services. And one of the things that stands out most is how many of these services launched only in the course of the last year. Disney Plus, Apple TV Plus, Peacock just launched today. I'm sure Linda's going to talk about that after me. But HBO Max just launched. Viacom CBS All Access is relaunching early next year. So you've got all these AVOD services that are just being kind of acquired and being reinvested in. Fox buying Tubi, Viacom buying Pluto. The reality is there's this surge of content that doesn't require the bundle. Many of these services don't even have advertising, or they allow you to opt out of advertising if you pay a little bit more. But the content is just getting started. What you see today versus what you see in a few years. Think back to Netflix in 2013 when they launched House of Cards versus where they are now. Think about where each of these services is going to be, and the bundle's getting crushed even before these services ramp up. And one of the things I hear from media executives all the time is, oh, but if you aggregate all of these services that you saw on the last slide, you're spending more than you were actually spending in the bundle. That whole argument is BS, because the reality is the content that the consumer wants to see actually isn't in the bundle. Star Wars Mandalorian, you won't find on cable television. The Crown, you won't find on DirecTV. Little Fires Everywhere, nowhere on Comcast. And so the problem is each of these services, you don't any longer need the bundle. In many cases, you can't even have the bundle to actually gain access to this content. And by far the most ambitious content that's being created right now across the board, all of it is going to these streaming services, because each of these companies, go back to that starting point, each of them wants to build a direct relationship with the consumer. They want to cut out the middle person. They want to actually understand who you are, what you're interested in, and be able to market directly to you. And that is that dramatic change in legacy media business. And when you think about where does the bundle settle out, we get that question a lot. This is a slide from that same Disney ESPN presentation in 2014, where they themselves said that only 30% of fans were avid fans. And so if you believe the avid fans are going to be the ones who subscribe to the bundle, and let's say some of the casual fans do too, you're looking at a bundle that's going to settle in somewhere between 40 and 50 million subscribers over the next several years. So you're going to reach essentially 1/3 of TV households and roughly half of where you did back in 2012 by advertising or marketing on television. That is a huge problem for every brand in the world, is that TV is not going to provide the platform to reach consumers. And on top of it, time spent with these devices is collapsing, because now linear TV is just something you do part of the time. There's so many other options that over the last 10 years, time spent per person has gone from 5 hours to 3 hours. And if we had the time, I could break it down and show you the demographics. But obviously, as you get younger, the demographics fall off of a chart. There was actually this Samsung slide that was given at the New Fronts that I captured because I thought it was fascinating. And it sort of speaks to this, that 26% of the 26% of the population are heavy linear TV viewers, and they're watching 86% of the linear TV. And that's essentially the older demographics, because the younger demographics have shifted far more aggressively into the streaming category than the older demographics. And so the problem is, even if you're advertising on TV, and let's just say you're actually staring at the screen during ad breaks versus staring down at one of your devices, you're reaching a small group of people over and over again, and you're not reaching a large group of the population with your compelling messages, just because they're no longer there, they're no longer engaged on those platforms. And then let's go, you just had Emmett on from Twitch. And I think every conversation now in media has to focus on the gaming sector. When you think about what's happened over just the last few years, I mean, we'll use Fortnite. There's obviously, you have many other examples right now that are exploding in gaming. But I use Fortnite because this chart to me was fascinating, is that when people start to play Fortnite, it eats into other activities, whether it's going to the movies, whether it's listening to music. Fortnite is a time suck, and you get lost in these worlds. And I mean, I have 3 young daughters, and I see what happens as they start to embrace these platforms and how much of their daily lives shifts from whether it be TV or music and shifts into gaming. And so the reality is, it's not just these, everyone likes to talk about the streaming wars and how, Disney Plus is hurting Netflix, but it's Fortnite and it's all of these new uses of time. It's this war for attention that everyone is fighting for, and it goes a lot broader than just video. And so it really causes marketers to have to rethink what that marketing approach is. And you see, in terms of COVID, the big winner is actually not video. I mean, video's gone up. You see on this slide, video streaming is up 37%. You saw that linear TV was even up, although still down year over year. It was actually up relative to where it started the year. But the big winner, the huge winner, has been gaming. And I think that all goes back to rethinking the marketing approach. And so whether it's what P&G did with Charmin to do, pause ads on Hulu, whether it's, brands that are creating content, essentially branded content, obviously what Ron Howard talked about in terms of what P&G is doing with them, but branded content, you see what Shell did, where they actually took a YouTube show and actually ended up making it into a series on Amazon Prime outside of the US. Obviously influencers on YouTube, or even product placement. I mean, there was so much product placement in Stranger Things, it was almost absurd over the last couple of seasons. But there really needs to be this focus of, okay, there are big screen ways, like we just showed, to reach consumers, but how do you reach them where they're spending the most time, which is on their mobile devices? And I think a lot of that's going to speak to either these mobile platforms. You had TikTok on before, we're showcasing TikTok. You look at Fortnite, you look at how brands are inserting themselves into these experiences organically, where it's fun to use them. Coca-Cola on Snapchat is on the right. You see the ability to use hashtag challenges on TikTok. It seems like actually one of the most innovative things is creating experiences on TikTok where brands, just like with Snapchat with Lenses, where you're interacting with the brand in a very unique way, and it's very organic, and it's less interruptive than marketing has traditionally been on TV, where it stops the experience you're in. And I think about gaming and go, what are the opportunities beyond just product placement? And you look at like what you've done with Bounty, where Bounty is actually reward video inside of Call of Duty Mobile. And I wonder to myself, like, why don't we see more of this? Like, the gaming companies know that in-game reward video works extremely well. That's where consumers are spending more and more of their time. Make content or make ads that feel like content that add value to the gaming experience versus the interruptive experience that we've seen in TV over the last few years or last several decades. And I think that's sort of what has to change. And, when I think about this whole marketing equation, it's all about making great content that doesn't feel like ads, that doesn't waste somebody's time, that you actually want to share or talk about with consumers. And I think there is just this sort of equation of how the brands have to change to adapt to this universe. And I think that my last comment is just, when you think about how fast this is moving, just realize what happened at Disney over the last 4 years. And every single other media company is having the same conclusion, that the legacy model is no longer sustainable. And the faster they move to streaming, the faster it causes the consumer to shift away. And that's why everyone needs to not be relying on TV and think differently about their approach to advertising and marketing. And John, that is as fast as I can give this presentation and leave a couple of minutes for questions.
And Rich, I wish we had it, but we're running late. That was so dense and information packed that I know you'll be either on Twitter or on the chat on Hopin, and I hope you can answer some questions directly from the audience there. But thank you so much for being part of this, and as always, brilliant, and I look forward to talking with you more about it offline.